In our headlines on this Monday, October 27th, here in South Korea, President Lee Jae-myung shares his vision to deepen South Korea's comprehensive strategic partnership with the ASEAN during this year's annual meeting with the regional bloc in Malaysia. Also in Malaysia, President Lee Jae-myung sits down with his Cambodian counterpart Hun Manet to address, among other matters, the recent death of a South Korean student in the Southeast Asian nation. Meanwhile, on the local bourse, the benchmark KOSPI index soars past the 4,000 mark for the first time during trade on this Monday, driven by optimistic investor sentiment. President Lee Jae-myung met with his ASEAN counterparts in Malaysia earlier on this Monday for this year's summit with the regional bloc. Our presidential office correspondent Song Yoo-jin covers this meeting and more.
A contributor, a springboard, and a partner, or CSP for short. That's the vision President Lee Jae-myung has laid out for South Korea and ASEAN's comprehensive strategic partnership, also CSP, the bloc's highest level of partnership established with Seoul last year.
저는 한 아세안 관계가 이웃 사촌과 같다고 생각합니다. 아세안과 한국은 금융위기와 팬데믹, 자연재해 등이 닥칠 때마다 힘을 모아 위기를 극복해온 자랑스러운 경험이 있습니다.
The pillars of the vision unveiled by the president himself at the South Korea-ASEAN summit on Monday are expanding people-to-people exchanges, upgrading the free trade agreement to boost exports, and strengthening joint responses to shared security threats. Lee particularly focused on transnational crimes such as online scams, an issue that has raised big concern back home following the death of a Korean college student believed to have been lured to Cambodia by a scam gang.
한국경찰청은 아세안 아폴과의 수사 공조를 통해 조직적 범죄 단지를 건절하고 초국가 범죄가 이 지역에서 더 이상 발붙일 곳이 없도록 협력을 강화해 나갈 것입니다.
According to presidential spokesperson Kang Yoo-jung, during the summit's closed-door session, President Lee outlined his administration's North Korea policy, emphasizing dialogue, normalization of inter-Korean relations, and denuclearization, which received strong support from participating leaders. On the same day, President Lee also made his debut at the ASEAN Plus 3 summit, which brings together South Korea, Japan, and China, along with the ASEAN members. He stressed the need to work together to tackle what he called, quote, complex and multi-layered challenges.
인구 고령화, 저출산, 국가 간 세대 간, 계층 간 디지털 격차, 기후변화와 자연재해로 인한 식량 위기, 에너지 위기, 초국가 범죄 등 다양한 도전 과제들이 우리 모두의 일상에 큰 영향을 미치고 있습니다. 한중일 간 교류가 아세안 플러스 3 협력으로 이어지고 아세안 플러스 3에서의 협력이 한중일 간 교류를 견인하는 선순환을 위해 중국 그리고 일본과 긴밀하게 협력해 나가겠습니다.
The summit concluded with a joint statement on enhancing regional economic and financial cooperation.
It's the beginning of a super week of multilateral diplomacy. Once he returns to South Korea, waiting for the president is the APEC economic leaders meeting in Gyeongju, as well as high-stakes summits with U.S. President Donald Trump and China's Xi Jinping. Song Yoo-jin, Arirang News, Kuala Lumpur.
On the margins of the ASEAN-related meetings, the president also sat down separately with his counterpart from Cambodia to address joint action against scam operations based in the Southeast Asian nation. Arirang's Yoon Jung-min has more.
Tackling transnational online scam crimes topped the agenda when President Lee Jae-myung met Cambodian Prime Minister Hun Manet on the sidelines of the ASEAN-related summits in Kuala Lumpur, in the wake of a recent surge of such crimes in Cambodia, where some South Koreans have been found involved or fell victim.
대한민국에서는 현재 이 스캠 범죄 때문에 우리 국민들 전체가 매우 예민한 상태인데 우리 캄보디아 당국이 대한민국 국민들에 대해서 각별한 배려를 해주신 점 진심으로 감사드립니다.
The Cambodian leader began the summit by offering his condolences for the recent death of a Korean college student, believed to have been lured to Cambodia by a scam gang, and pledged for stronger crackdowns on such crimes with other nations.
This is not a single country's issue, it's a regional issue. It's work in Cambodia and many other countries around that make it complex.
As a result of their meeting, they agreed to take further action.
The two leaders have agreed to launch a task force in November dedicated to investigating crimes in Cambodia targeting Koreans. The number of Korean police officers who will be dispatched and their operation will be confirmed as soon as possible.
In light of the launch, President Lee signaled that South Korea may lower its travel alerts for certain areas in Cambodia, including Phnom Penh. Other areas of focus were bolstering cooperation on a wide range of issues, as President Lee expressed hope of elevating bilateral cooperation to a new level, while Prime Minister Manet hoped to expand investment, people-to-people exchanges, as well as cooperation on security and defense. Before heading home, President Lee sat down with Malaysian Prime Minister Anwar Ibrahim on Monday for a short get-to-know session. Yoon Jung-min, Arirang News.
Curtains are up this week for the annual main APEC meetings in the city of Gyeongju as global leaders and corporate executives come together for a host of much-anticipated engagements. Also making headlines are a number of sideline summits. Our senior correspondent Oh Soo-young reports.
As host of the annual Asia-Pacific Economic Cooperation Forum this week, South Korea aims to bring together 21 economies representing 40% of the world's population and 60% of global GDP. Under the theme Building a Sustainable Tomorrow, the annual meeting will centre on three goals: strengthening regional connectivity, harnessing AI-driven growth, and advancing the transition to a more resilient and prosperous Asia-Pacific. Corporate heads of the region's largest firms from Samsung and SK to OpenAI and NVIDIA will attend the CEO Summit on Thursday and Friday. And government leaders will convene on Friday and Saturday amid deepening geopolitical standoffs and the fragmentation of global trade.
So for APEC, which was built on the idea of open trade, this fragmentation really is a test. And for sustainability, global climate change or energy transition, those are not side issues anymore. Actually, they literally define competitiveness. So these APEC member states are under huge pressure to decarbonize, but still grow. So collaboration on green tech will be really the key during the APEC. And also, it's very important for our future generation.
But the question remains on whether South Korea can keep the focus on regional cooperation. Top-level meetings on the sidelines are expected to dominate headlines, with the leaders of South Korea, the United States, Japan and China all holding one-on-one talks. An unlikely but not impossible meeting of North Korean leader Kim Jong-un and US President Donald Trump could also steal the limelight. However, the biggest spotlight will fall on the first US-China summit since President Trump's return to office, and on how their tariff and export controls may reshape the regional economy, in stark contrast to APEC's founding principle of free trade and open cooperation. Still, experts say South Korea could set the tone of the multilateral meeting.
Also, I think APEC could serve as some sort of de-risking platform, so that we can talk about how to separate our national security issues from commerce. For example, we can have some practical conversation with the major powers like the US or Japan on national security issues, while staying well connected, well engaged with China and ASEAN on trade. So reducing our security risk while keeping our markets open.
Through a series of high-level official meetings, Seoul has been working to produce the Gyeongju Declaration and a separate initiative on AI governance.
At the moment, South Korea is pushing for supply chain stability, especially in semiconductors, batteries, GPUs, and some critical minerals. And we need some practical plans for WTO consistent trade on digital products, as well as some sensible AI guardrails, so that our businesses can invest with confidence. I think a very interesting opportunity for us to thread some needle so we can balance some secure supply chain, greener growth, and maybe fewer friction for exporters. And if we managed to strengthen some trust among big players during APEC, that must be really a win.
Amid geopolitical theatrics, APEC Week will test South Korea's diplomatic prowess, its ability to draw consensus amid contention, and to keep dialogue alive among competing member economies. Seoul, Arirang News.
And the host city of this year's APEC, Gyeongju, also has a treat for those seeking a glimpse, that is, of its ancient royal treasures. Our Park Hyo-bin files this report.
The host city of APEC 2025 Korea, Gyeongju, was once the center of the ancient Silla kingdom known as the Land of Gold. Among its many gold treasures, the crown was the most important symbol of royal power and craftsmanship. So far, 6 Silla gold crowns have been discovered. And now, for the first time, all 6 are displayed together at the Gyeongju National Museum along with other royal ornaments to celebrate APEC 2025 Korea. The crowns, believed to have been made between the 5th and 6th centuries, have branches shaped like deer antlers symbolizing life and vitality. It is also believed that the king, as wearer of the crown, was a sacred being connected to the heavens. Silla's crowns are special because they make up more than half of all ancient gold crowns ever found in the world. No other kingdom has left behind so many golden relics in such good condition.
The Silla gold crown symbolizes the height of royal power and artistry, standing as one of the most exquisite ancient treasures in the world. Seeing all 6 together captures the true glory of the Land of Gold.
The museum also says the exhibition will help visitors discover the beauty and spirit of Silla art.
No kingdom other than Silla has left behind such unique cultural treasures as these gold crowns. We thought this would be the perfect theme to celebrate both APEC and the museum's 80th anniversary.
More than a showcase of artifacts, it's a journey through the artistry and legacy that defined ancient Silla. The exhibition runs until December 14th, drawing worldwide attention to the legacy of the Silla period. Park Hyo-bin, Arirang News, Gyeongju.
The Yongsan Presidential Office has reaffirmed the bilateral commitment to denuclearization in response to the U.S. leader's recent remarks about North Korea being, quote, sort of a nuclear power. Our Moon Jae-young explains.
Following U.S. President Donald Trump's remarks referring to North Korea as sort of a nuclear power, a South Korean presidential official said on Sunday that Trump appeared to recognize the advanced reality of North Korea's nuclear capabilities rather than officially recognizing its status or abandoning nuclearization goals. They also reaffirmed close coordination with the U.S. on denuclearization. Trump made the remarks during a press meeting aboard Air Force One on Friday in response to a question about Pyongyang's stance that recognition as a nuclear power is a prerequisite for talks with Washington. He departed for an Asia tour over the weekend, which includes a visit to South Korea, and expressed a strong desire to meet with North Korean leader Kim Jong-un.
Yeah, I do. I mean, if you want to put out the word, I'm open to it. You know, they don't have a lot of telephone service. They have a lot of nuclear weapons, but not a lot of telephone service. So I'm open to it. I had a great relationship with him, and he probably knows I'm coming, right?
However, prospects of a U.S.-North Korea meeting seem to have dimmed as North Korean Foreign Minister Choi Sun-hee departed Pyongyang for a trip to Russia and Belarus. According to the North State media, the Korean Central News Agency on Monday, Choi's visit to the two countries is at the invitation of their foreign ministers. Her absence during the run-up to Trump's visit to South Korea suggests that talks between Kim and Trump are unlikely to materialize. 문지영, Arirang News.
Meanwhile, top U.S. and Chinese negotiators have put in place a tangible framework for productive talks between their leaders here in South Korea later this week. Our Lee Seung-jae has details.
Top U.S. and Chinese economic officials have agreed on the framework of a new trade agreement, signaling progress ahead of a highly anticipated meeting between U.S. President Donald Trump and Chinese President Xi Jinping later this week. U.S. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent and Trade Representative Jameson Greer met with Chinese Vice Premier He Lifeng and top negotiator Li Chenggang on the sidelines of the ASEAN summit in Kuala Lumpur on Sunday, marking the fifth round of in-person discussions since May. Speaking to ABC News on the same day, Bessent said the two sides averted further tariffs thanks to the maximum leverage provided by Trump.
The president had given me maximum leverage when he threatened 100% tariffs if the Chinese imposed their rare earth global export controls. So I think we have averted that so that the tariffs will be averted.
Bessent said a substantial framework was put in place for the two leaders, adding that China has agreed to delay its expanded licensing regime for rare earth exports by 1 year, a move seen as a concession to ease trade tensions. He also said that China has agreed on substantial agriculture purchases for U.S. farmers. Meanwhile, President Trump arrived in Malaysia on Sunday for the ASEAN summit, his first stop on a 5-day Asia tour that will culminate his face-to-face meeting with Xi in South Korea on Thursday. Both sides are hoping to defuse mounting trade tensions following months of tariff threats and countermeasures. The new framework, if finalized, could mark a turning point in the trade dispute, with officials emphasizing cooperation over confrontation as they prepare for the leaders' summit later this week. Lee Seung-jae, Arirang News.
U.S. Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth is embarking on a trip around the Indo-Pacific this week to enhance regional ties amid escalating U.S.-China rivalry. Referring to the region as the Defense Department's priority theater, the Pentagon, in a statement on Sunday, said its chief will visit South Korea, Japan, Malaysia, and Vietnam. The exact dates and length of each stay have yet to be disclosed. On the agenda, though, is the importance of greater defense spending as Hegseth attends the ASEAN Defense Ministers meeting plus in Malaysia and the Security Consultative meeting here in South Korea. In other news, the South Korean stock market soared past the 4,000 mark for the first time on this Monday. Our correspondent Kim Do-yeon has the latest.
South Korea's benchmark KOSPI surpassed the 4,000 mark for the first time on Monday, driven by expectations of a U.S.-China trade deal and gains on Wall Street. The index opened strong, staying above 4,000 for the entire session and hitting a new intraday high of 4,042.83, where it closed. This year's rally marks a surge of around 68% from its closing point of 2,400.86 on January 2nd. The milestone also comes just over 4 months after the KOSPI returned to the 3,000-point range.
It appears there are expectations that the summit between President Trump and President Xi Jinping will yield positive results. Furthermore, continued optimism for the semiconductor industry, particularly the so-called super cycle, is driving foreign capital inflows and leading the domestic market's push past the 4,000 mark.
Samsung Electronics also made history as its share price broke 100,000 won since its last share split. This pushed its market capitalization to 597 trillion won, or about 417 billion US dollars. Samsung's shares closed at 102,000 won. SK Hynix also rose, with the market closing at 535,000, a gain of 4.9% compared to the last session's close. Together, the two chip giants account for approximately 32% of the KOSPI's entire market cap. The surge is attributed to a recovery in the semiconductor industry and resurgent competitiveness in high-bandwidth memory chips. Analysts note that significant supply increases from major memory producers, including Samsung Electronics and SK Hynix, face fiscal constraints in the short term, with new supply possible only from the second half of 2026 at the earliest. Memory prices are expected to continue rising until the end of that year. Therefore, earnings estimates for Samsung and SK Hynix are likely to be revised upward, with the semiconductor sector's rally forecast to continue into 2026, outperforming the main index. Kim Do-yeon, Arirang News.
In a rare show of bipartisan solidarity, lawmakers gathered at the parliament this past weekend to endorse bills on healthcare, welfare, education and environmental reform. Our political correspondent Moon Hae-ryun has details.
The National Assembly held a rare weekend plenary session on Sunday, passing a total of 76 bills aimed at improving citizens' welfare and addressing key social issues.
I believe that holding a plenary session on Sunday with bipartisan agreement is very meaningful, as it demonstrates both parties' commitment to passing livelihood-related bills.
Among the most notable legislation is a bill designed to prevent gaps in emergency room care by improving patient triage and establishing direct communication channels between emergency medical institutions and transport providers. Other bills passed during the session cover a wide range of social and public welfare issues. Amendments to the Child Welfare Act now allow foster parents to exercise legal authority over financial accounts for the children in their care. A new law also prohibits sex offenders from operating or working in accommodation serving foreign nationals. In addition, lawmakers passed legislation establishing lifelong education programs for people with disabilities to promote independent living and social participation. Bills were also approved to support the stable supply of essential medicines, ensure interest relief on student loans, and provide compensation support for victims of digital sex crimes during criminal proceedings. Financial and administrative reforms were included as well. Local governments will now be able to issue bonds in response to unforeseen urgent financial needs. The creation of the National Assembly Records Office was authorized to manage official parliamentary documents. Environmental accountability was strengthened through enhanced procedures for greenhouse gas reduction plans aimed at achieving carbon neutrality by 2050. During the session, lawmakers also formally reported a notion for a parliamentary investigation into last year's Jeju Air plane crash at Muan Airport, signaling continued oversight of government affairs. Political observers say the session reflects growing pressure on lawmakers to focus on public welfare amid ongoing partisan disputes. Moon Hae-ryun, Arirang News.
This is The World Now, bringing you the latest stories from around the globe. In Kuala Lumpur on Sunday, U.S. President Donald Trump co-signed a ceasefire deal between Thailand and Cambodia in Washington's strongest diplomatic push in the region this year. The truce, signed on the sidelines of the ASEAN summit, formalizes an earlier July agreement that halted 5 days of border fighting that killed dozens and displaced thousands. Its first phase includes the release of captured soldiers, the removal of landmines, and international troop monitoring along the frontier. Alongside the peace pact, Washington announced trade deals with Malaysia and Cambodia and an MOU on critical minerals and supply chain resilience with Thailand. U.S. President Donald Trump announced a 10% tariff increase on imports from Canada on Saturday after a political spat over an advertisement sponsored by the Ontario government, which quotes former U.S. President Ronald Reagan. The ad, which included part of an address made by Reagan in 1987, where he said tariffs hurt every American, was described by Trump as a fraud. Trump also criticized Canadian officials for failing to withdraw the ad before World Series matches between Canada's Toronto Blue Jays and the U.S. team, the LA Dodgers. Canada is currently the only G7 country without a fresh deal under Washington's tariff regime, which already includes levies of 35% on goods, 50% on metals, and 25% on automobiles. The Canadian Chamber of Commerce urged both sides to resolve the dispute through diplomacy, warning that escalating tariffs would hurt North American competitiveness. In Moscow on Sunday, Russia announced a successful test of its nuclear-powered Burevestnik cruise missile. Russian officials say the missile, known by NATO as Skyfall, flew for 15 hours and covered about 14,000 kilometers, demonstrating its ability to evade missile defenses. The Kremlin says the weapon, powered by a nuclear engine, could soon be deployed as part of its strategic arsenal, calling it a system no one else in the world has. The test came just hours after Russia launched one of its deadliest air assaults on Ukraine in weeks. More than 100 drones and missiles struck residential areas in Kiev, killing at least 3 civilians and injuring dozens. Ukrainian officials said Russia has unleashed nearly 1,200 drones and 50 missiles in the past week alone. In Paris on Saturday, police arrested 2 suspects over the recent jewelry heist at the Louvre Museum, one of the boldest art thefts in French history. Authorities say one suspect was detained at Charles de Gaulle Airport as he prepared to board a flight out of the country, and another was reportedly planning to travel to Mali. They didn't say whether any of the jewelry valued at more than $100 million had been recovered. The arrests come a week after 4 masked thieves used power tools and a ladder truck to break into the museum's Gallery of Apollo in broad daylight. Officials say DNA evidence found at the scene led to the suspect's identification. France's justice minister admitted security protocols had failed, damaging the country's global image. In response, the Louvre has tightened security and transferred its most valuable pieces to the Bank of France's underground vaults. Chu Ji-hyun, Arirang News.
This morning was the coldest morning this fall. Seoraksan Mountain was the coldest place, with the temperature feeling as cold as minus 13 degrees Celsius. All of the cold wave warnings in the central regions have been lifted, but the cold wave advisories in Gyeongsangbuk-do province have increased. This cold will peak tomorrow morning, with Seoul plunged to just 2 degrees Celsius. Some areas will see frost or ice in this sudden cold. You should dress up well on your way to work tomorrow. A cold morning is expected tomorrow all over the country, with most areas starting off at below 10 degrees. However, temperatures will recover to double digits during the day. Seoul will rise up to 12 degrees Celsius, Daejeon and Gyeongju at 14 degrees. We'll return to the average temperatures for this time of year starting from the second half of this week. That's all for Korea. Here are the weather conditions around the world.
Those are the headlines at this hour here in South Korea. Coming up right after this break is our daily panel session. Do stay with us, and thank you for now.